Welcome back to ReadingBear. Today, we will take a look at some new ProRevenge stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
The first one is titled, You Robbed the Wrong Guy. Just a quick history to set the stage. At a younger age I moved from Chicago to Baltimore to take a job with the federal government. When I started, I hit it off with a couple guys, who've since become my best friends. We all lived together for about 5 years until one by one we started moving on, getting married, etc. One guy, we'll call him John, left our place of employment to take a job as a Secret Service agent. As everyone went their separate ways, I thought I'd make a smart decision as a young professional and buy a house in 2007, right before the financial collapse. Needless to say, immediately after buying I was upside down big time and struggling. I had some other co-workers move in, but they only lasted about a year before abruptly moving out, leaving me scrambling to find a roommate, and thus setting the stage for my revenge story. I ended up posting on a bunch of venues to find the new roommate. One guy ended up far and above the best option, we'll call him Russell. Russell was a military vet, who had served a couple tours downrange, and was now a sous chef at a local restaurant. He was easy to get along with, so I pulled the trigger in haste without doing the proper checks. I should have, primarily due to being in a desperate financial situation. The first sign something was off was when Russell moved in. He came with just a couple boxes and a TV, no bed, furniture, etc. The next clue came from me chatting him up about his time in the military. On the surface he could talk the talk, but as I got more nuanced, his answers became more, well, wrong. He claimed to be a former ranger, so he would have known the topics discussed. The final clue was the classic one. He started making excuses for rent payment on month 2. By this time I knew something was not right, so I politely told Russell to move out, which he did immediately. Once gone, I went to Home Depot to buy new locks, and much to my surprise my debit card didn't work. Come to find out, Russell had stolen a checkbook and cleaned me out. Every cent I had in my account was gone. At this time I'm feeling a mixture of anger, fear of not being able to pay my mortgage, and disappointment in myself for not vetting him properly. When I ended up telling John, he was livid. He wanted every detail about the situation. Little did I know, John told all his co-workers and they immediately opened a case on Russell. For those of you who don't know, the Secret Service also deals with financial, economic crimes, albeit normally on a much larger scale than my savings account. Within a few days, Secret Service agents had tracked down and interrogated, arrested all the individuals who had cashed the fake checks on Russell's behalf. One turned and advised Russell would be at the Dick's Last Resort at the Baltimore Inner Harbor that night. John and his crew changed into plain clothes and went there to wait. Lo and behold, Russell shows up and acts like he owns the place. He started announcing that he was leaving on a deployment to Iraq, so he wanted to buy the entire bar drinks, with my money, I should add. As he was standing there paying for everyone's drinks, John stood up and screamed, "Secret Service, you're under arrest." 3 agents slammed him down, cuffed him, and pulled him out where 2 black SUVs rolled up on the boardwalk to take him away. My other friend who had gone to observe said the entire restaurant paused in stunned silence for about 30 seconds. They take Russell in and by this time John says he's bawling his eyes out. The best part of the ordeal was John made him add in his written confession, "I routinely pretend to be an Army Ranger, but have never served." Before being taken to the city jail, Russell asked John, "Why did the Secret Service arrest me?" To which John replied, "You robbed the wrong guy." Epilogue: the bank ended up giving me all my money back very quickly under a fraud claim. I ended up attending Russell's court appearance with John, where he took a plea and spent 6 months behind bars. Needless to say, I was a bit more careful in choosing my next roommate. We've been happily married for 5 years. The next one is titled, The Crazy Chick Was High, No More Mr. Nice Guy. I own and operate a delivery service delivering hot tubs, furniture, and pool tables. I've been doing about 11 years or so. Like any job, it has its ups and downs and more than a fair share of conflicts. There were conflicts frequently between me and the stores I delivered for, employees and assistants I've hired, and customers who've hired me through the years. This is a tale of a B*TCH. A drugged-out, chemically addled B*TCH. It was 4 years ago. I was doing a pool table setup near St. Louis, followed by a hot tub delivery between St. Louis and the lakes. As per normal, I had to collect a considerable amount of money from these customers which had to be dropped off at the business that hired me at the Lake of the Ozarks. I finished my last job around 6:30 p.m. and arrived at the business to drop off my collections around 8 p.m. The store, knowing how accommodating I was toward them, asked if I'd be interested in delivering a really light sofa to a town up the road. They told me it was 10 miles away, turned out to be 30. So I was a little irritated by the delay, and it being in a fairly remote area near the lake, I ended up spending extra time trying to locate it after dark. I wasn't happy, considering the fact I still had a 2-hour drive ahead of me before arriving home. I end up finding the place. I knock on the door and discover that I've delivered during dinner time for the people. I apologize for how long it took to find them and asked if they'd like the sofa deposited in the living room or the garage. The man tells me neither and informs me that it has to go downstairs in the sunroom. He shows me the stairs, at which point I inform him that the delivery was a first room of the house or garage delivery, a fact they were informed about before I left the store. The man is hostile when I tell him this and says he isn't accepting the delivery unless I put it in the sunroom. I inform him again that it is a garage or living room delivery, no stairs. I also inform him that it will never fit down the stairs no matter what. It is at this point that he leads me over to the side of his house and tells me that I'll have to carry it down the side or I can take it back to the store. I'm used to this tactic and any other day it might have worked, but I made a lot of money off my first 2 deliveries and I wasn't making very much off the sofa delivery, so I'm more than happy to take it back to the store. The side of the hill he wanted me to carry sofa down in the dark was covered in rocks about the size of my head or bigger. An extremely dangerous endeavor I refused to undertake. Here's where it gets bizarre. I had already taken the sofa off the truck in anticipation of carrying it into the living room or the garage, and it is sitting in the driveway. He thinks I'm bluffing and tells me to take the sofa back to the store. I inform him that's not a problem, but he won't be able to pick it up or return it or exchange it until the delivery fee is paid. He's already told me he wasn't paying. I reach down to grab the sofa and his wife, the woman who bought it, jumps on my back and starts clawing my face. She's raked my cheek and clawed some pretty deep furrows in the skin. In fact, I still have some faint scarring from these scratches even today. I shrug her off where she lands on the sofa, at which point, her husband threatens to kick my ass for assaulting his wife. He gets in my face, cursing at me using every curse word combination he can think of. And at this point, the redneck in me moves to the forefront of brain and I stand my ground and promise them that I will plant the next person to touch me in the ground. I'm P***SSED beyond being professional, but still, I represent the store in this delivery, so I politely ask him to have his wife get off the soda. By the light of the street lamp, I can see that the woman is high as a freaking kite. Her eyes are glassy, her nose is red, and I can smell the pot on her and the wine she'd been drinking. She is out of it for the most part. He removes his wife from the sofa, and I reach down to grab the sofa again. I warn him to control his wife if he cares about her, and he calls me a few choice names in reply. I mentioned that the sofa was really light, so I usually just pick this model up and throw it on my shoulder and carry it where it needs to go. This time was no different except for the crazy chick. I reached down to grab it again and the woman tried to jump on my back again, much to the protest of her husband. I had anticipated her doing this again and quickly snatched the sofa the driveway and quick-stepped over to the truck. She missed me completely and landed face first on the pavement, fucking up her grill horribly. I mean, she messed herself up horribly. She didn't stop herself with her hands before she hit. She just plowed into the pavement like she was leaping into a pool. The man gets upset and takes a swing at me. I step back from him and move toward the front of my truck. I do this 2 more times with his swings going wide each time. I didn't want to fight if I could help it, so I just kept backing out of range, and in doing so, I was stepping into frame for the driving cam I used to have in the cab of my truck. He tried hitting me about 6 more times until his wife's crying forced him to abandon his attempt at assault. I secured the sofa while he tended to his wife. I was parked on the street because his driveway was pretty steep and I had a hot tub trailer attached. He told me I better not try using his driveway to turn around or he'd drag me out of my truck and beat my butt. I inform him that the sofa, because of the late hour, will be taken back to my shop and would not be released until to the store or him until the delivery fee was paid. He told me he'd be filing assault charges against me for what I did to his wife. I showed him my camera and said please do, because I had it on film. I didn't. Realized on the ride home that the camera hadn't been on. As I was backing up the street, because they lived on a dead-end street, my trailer jackknifed into a dead snag. After pulling forward and back several times, I was able to back it up the hill and around the curve into the regular street again. It was at this point that I noticed that part of one of the limbs in the dead snag had broken loose and landed on the shoulder of the road, which gave me an idea. I backed the trailer into the dead snag a couple of times and the top of the tree broke off and blocked about 2/3 of the street. I got out and with a little grunting and grubbing I was able to pull the tree top across the street enough to block their exiting their block. It cost me a tail light on the trailer, but it was worth it. The sweet justice in this was that my shop that I was storing the sofa in was 2 hours away in Springfield. When they finally contacted the store and I explained everything to them, the store backed me up and returned their money minus the money for the 2-hour delivery I charged for taking it to Springfield with me. Well, that was my tale of redneck revenge. Hope you liked it. The next one is titled, How to Win at Kid IT. When I was younger, think approximately 15, I was the family IT guy. Still am actually. Back then I used to help countless people free of charge, due to my mother whoring me out for her friends and co-workers. I did not like it, but I had little say about things. Honestly, it was a minor annoyance. Most of them were pretty cool people and appreciative of my help. The biggest thing that annoyed me was my mother volunteering me when I had other plans. I did it until the fateful day I dealt with Harpy. Harpy was one of those late middle-aged bitter as crap women you find every so often. Not one positive thing came out of her mouth. I honestly have no idea why my mum wanted me to help her. She brought me her computer loaded with viruses and malware. When she dropped it off, the only thing she said to me was, "Fix it." No thank you, no description of the problem, nada. So I get all the malware cleaned off, viruses removed, get it going again. I almost had to completely wipe it and reinstall Windows, it was so bad. I give it to my mum to drop off to Harpy. About a month later, Harpy complained to my mother that I had broken her computer and it did not work right. So my mother brings it back home. I look at the computer and figure out what happened. The idiot woman reset all her icons to arrange by name by accident. FYI, if you're getting free help, don't try to cover your own incompetence with, "It's your fault, you touched it and it broke because of you." When I originally got the thing was so infected with malware and viruses it barely boot up. Lucky for me I had a backup. I kept a rolling backup of all the computers I worked on before I touched anything for 5 computers just in case shit like this happened. I restored all the viruses and malware. Told my mum, "Give your friend back her computer, it's just like it was when you gave it to me last time." The next day I got a call from the Harpy literally screaming and cursing at me, telling me, "You was an idiot kid who does not know computers. How dare you break my ducking computer," etc. Fortunately we had an old-fashioned answering machine I picked up the same time as the machine. It got everything. That was that I had had enough. I took the bus to my mother's work. She came rushing out thinking something horrible had happened and I played the recording for her. When it finished I told my mother from now on it's $30 an hour with 2 hours up front. Or I'm not touching a damn thing. She took it and whenever one of her friends asked for free PC work she played the recording for them. Saying that's why I won't help anyone for free anymore. Word got around the office that not only had Harpy screamed at their co-worker's kid but cost everyone their free personal slave. The pro part comes in about a year later. My mother's boss asked my mother if I was still fixing people's computers. She said yes. He wanted to hire me part-time over the summer to help out the regular IT guy and wanted to set up an interview. My mum told me. I called the guy up and we set up a time. The interview went really well, but I did not want to work with the Harpy who screamed at me. I asked him if Harpy still worked there. He said, "Yes she does, do you know her?" I told him I did know her and I can't take the job due to an event that happened about a year ago. He of course asked what happened. I said, I really don't want to get into it, but he could ask my mum, she can give him details. Come home, told mum how the interview went and she still had the tape. I could hardly believe it. About 2 months later Harpy got the axe. Apparently she was sweet as could be to the boss and a complete idiot to everyone else. The tape was enough to get the boss to start looking real close at everything she did. My mum still reels at how fast Harpy got written up for shit she had pulled for years. The next one is titled, How to Deal with Douchebag Roommates. With an assist from the least likely source. I had passive-aggressive roommates when I was in my trades training in the military. They usually have a course room together, 4 to a room, so that they can study together, help each other out and generally build some esprit de corps. Our course was odd-numbered, so there were only 3 on our course in the room, and 1 guy from my trade in our room. But his course was just finishing. He was a good guy, and I got along great with him. My roommates were passive-aggressive douchebags who hated him. Passive-aggressive. Putting their bed space and furniture together with the TV and stereo on their side facing them so neither he nor I could see the TV or turn down the volume. Or even use the stereo when they weren't around, whereas everyone else sharing rooms shared their gear and equipment. He and I were smokers, and the douches weren't. This guy smoked 2 packs a day to my 1, and that's why they hated him. They whined and cried to our course mum, NCO in charge of anything we needed as to admin, or leave requests etc., and he was removed. Got a new roommate, a guy the first was friends with that went through basic with me. He didn't believe the sh*t I told him about these 2 until he moved in and saw how they had arranged the room. Again, they hated him because he told them to shut the duck up when they cried at him about coming in late from a night exercise and waking them by mistake. I couldn't tell them off since they were in my class, but he could, and he never took their crap. Again, to the course mum, and boom, he is gone. Now it is just the 3 of us. They focused their crap on me and I just let it slide. I would go to sleep and they would turn on the TV loud. I would be studying and they would crank the stereo to 80s pop rock, which I hated. They would accidentally spill stuff on my clean uniform while I was out, so I would have to rewash it an hour before inspection. They finally *SSED me off when the devoted the act of scuffing the black polish off the leather so it is raw brown leather, my parade boots that I had spent over 100 hours polishing for the RCAF anniversary parade. Again, they claimed it was an accident. They both went to one of their parents' places over a long weekend and I went to work. Never duck with the top of your class in an electronics trade. I took their stereo, amp, and TV to the CRS Communications Radar Systems lab and rebuilt the power amps on the volume and power amp for the stereo, amp, and TV. From 95 decibels down to 30 decibels. Then I sealed it all up and returned them to the room. Since all of my course was from the same province as my base was located in, they were all gone and no one saw me take or return the stuff to the barracks. When they returned, they couldn't figure out what was wrong since the factory seals were in place, and the stuff was in the exact same position when they left. At the same time I had bought a ghetto boom box with a capital G that pumped out a booming 100 decibels and started playing Pink Floyd as loud as it would go. Followed up with Deep Purple, all of which they called druggy music. This went on for 4 weeks. Afterwards, the course mum calls me into his office to let me know that they complained again, since they were non-smokers and I smoked, that they wanted me moved. I was upset, but before I could get mad, the course mum said, they are only allowed 3 roommate moves, so whoever they get for a roommate they are now stuck with for the next 4 months. Then he winked at me. I was baffled as to what the wink meant. After class 1 went up to my old room to move my stuff to my new room. Grabbed my stuff and went down to my new room, walked in and there were my 2 old roommates. Damn was I glad to see they were my new roomies. As I finished moving in, I went to grab the last of my stuff, and the douche's new roomies were moving in. 2 French-Canadian guys who smoked 3 packs a day each. I laughed for a day. Thanks course mum. Near the end of my stay there, the base had a conglomeration of guys in my trade in different courses, and whenever enough of them get together they always have epic parties. My roomie who finished his trades training made me first promise not to tell they guys on my course about the party. Then he gave me the date and time. My course had heard about the party but they didn't know where it was going to be. I told them it was at a bar in town 40 km from the base starting at 2100 hours. But it was at the Junior Ranks bar on the far side of the base starting at 1900 hours. Best party ever. The next Monday, they all knew they went to the wrong place, and I told them it was a great party that they weren't wanted at. Best revenge ever. Even the guys in their own trade wanted nothing to do with them. P.S. Douche took his stereo, amp, and TV in for repairs, but his warranty was voided because the set had been repaired by a non-authorized repairman. To this day, so many years later, I wonder if they ever figured it out. The last one is titled, "His employees are now treated fairly thanks to me." Always stand up to unfair employers. So, I was working at a 7-Eleven for just shy of a year. The store was a franchise, which means it was independently owned by a guy whose IQ was probably somewhere in the 80s. He treated us all like crap, and the only person who made more than minimum wage was the useless clerk he was cheating on his wife with, who, for some reason, made $15 an hour. This guy never did anything by the book. If he thought it would make him more money, then the law didn't apply to him. Nobody at the store ever got a lunch. We were barely afforded smoke breaks, and we weren't allowed to eat while on the clock. In California, when you work more than 5 hours without lunch, you're supposed to get paid an extra hour's wages, which counts toward overtime. We didn't get that either. On top of that, when he did payroll, he wouldn't actually go by when you clocked in and out, he went by the schedule he wrote. So if you stayed an extra hour or two to help out when it got busy, you'd be working for free, because the hours wouldn't show up. Also, your schedule was subject to change whenever he felt like it. There were several times he wrote me up for showing up late because he would change my shift without telling me. So, here's where the trouble starts. Whenever we would take expired food off the shelves, we'd come in the next day, and he had printed new expiration dates, pasted them on top of the old ones, and put the food back on the shelves. This happened consistently, the entire time I worked there. Well, one day, I'd had enough of his crap. I called up the health department and reported him, then emailed corporate and filled them in on what was going on. Well, word got back to him, and when I went in the next day, I'd received a complaint, and was promptly fired. I don't know about you, but I've never worked anywhere with a one-strike policy. Here's the thing, though. Since the day I started there, I'd been keeping records. I had copies of every schedule posted, and every pay stub I'd ever received. I went to the labor board that day and picked up the paperwork I needed. See, when you don't get lunches, and you don't get paid the extra hour you're supposed to, the labor board can force the employer to pay you the money he owes you in one lump sum. So I filled out the paperwork and turned it in. My old boss wasn't so smug when he had to make a check to me for $2,600, right after receiving a hefty fine from the health department. Now, I'm working to get the labor board to force him to hire me back under the whistleblower clause. If he has to rehire me, he also has to pay me back lost wages for the past few months. Also, my old co-workers get lunches now. Was the revenge sweet? It felt duckin' awesome. But that's not why I did it. I did it because that sack of crap was going to keep on exploiting his employees and customers to make a buck and keep being a worthless human being, and I felt like unless I did something, he was going to get away with it. I simply could not abide by the idea of him suffering no consequences for his actions. Thanks for listening.